All right, good afternoon, everybody, or should I say good evening. Welcome everybody to the audit committee meeting. Today's January 30th. We're starting roughly at 5:05. Before we get started, I want to make sure I recognize our counselors that are in attendance. So thank you, Counselor Govan and Counselor Click Bruce, as well as we have Counselor Allen joining us in person. Also attending, we have Young No, our Director of Internal Audit, as well as John Kerrigan, who's here representing facilities.
That's correct.
So thank you very much for everybody for coming.
Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah. All right. I guess I don't want to keep waiting. I'm gonna throw the floor to you, Mr. No.
Thank you, Councilor Delgado. I have two audit reports to present to the audit committee, and they include the follow-up review at Health and Human Services and a performance audit at facilities. Although the agenda has the follow-up review at HSS as the first item on the agenda, I propose that we start off with facilities in the interest of Jonathan Kerrigan's time. Jonathan, you don't need to stay for the follow-up review as it's being presented. So, with that said, if that's okay, I'll start off with facilities.
Sounds good to me.
Bye.
Really appreciate it. Thank you all.
Sure. All right, so I'll share my screen to go over the facilities audit report. So hopefully you see this report here called Facilities Division Performance Audit.
Yep, we see it.
Okay, so first I want to start off to say why we did the audit. So as I previously mentioned, every year we lay out an audit plan, and this was on our audit plan for FY22. So I want to thank Jonathan and his staff for their cooperation in performing the audit. They were very accommodating. So just I wanted to turn to the background of facilities first. Facilities is a division of parks, building, and recreation management. It composes of two component units: facilities management and custodial services. So the facilities management just includes the city portion, does not include any school activity. That function is under the budget of the school department, and they have and Jonathan has a dual reporting relationship for that component. He reports also to the superintendent, as well as on the city side to Patrick Sullivan. So they manage or they maintain approximately 90 buildings throughout the city, including schools, and about 6.5 million square feet of square space. The division has 28 full-time employees, and they have an operating budget of approximately 4.2 million. So on an annual basis, they complete about 8,000 work orders, give or take. It's when they do these work orders, they address city facilities as well as schools. When I mentioned the piece that's related to the school department, that's strictly the custodial function. But for the facilities management, Jonathan covers both school and city. So moving on to the objectives. So our objectives for this audit was to determine if city assets were properly safeguarded and the city facilities were effectively managed. Our scope included facilities management and custodial services, and for the period of calendar year 2022 and up through February 2023. So I just want to move on to the next page. So I just wanted to highlight some noteworthy accomplishments over at facilities. I think Jonathan does a great job in using technology and managing his staff. He has a dashboard in Munis that monitors the work orders assigned to his tradesmen, and he ensures that those work orders are properly being addressed and completed. and any, pileups or back orders get timely resolved and investigated. So that's a good process. And overall, we thought the audit was a good audit in that we know that Jonathan had really good processes in place. He had he had a good handle on what he had for assets, and he effectively managed facilities in that maintenance issues were properly addressed. And the recommendations that we came forth were primarily to strengthen his processes. So speaking of those recommendations, when we make recommendations in our report, we priority rank them just to give a roadmap to management on those recommendations to focus in on first, like red is high, yellow is moderate, and green is low. So with that said, I'll get into the actual audit report. So our first finding has to do with inventory management over at the custodial side of facilities management. So we noted that there were some assets that we chose for testing. We wanted to confirm that they were physically present at some city facilities, and they weren't able to immediately track down those assets to prove that they were still there. And eventually, it took them a while to locate those assets. So we made the recommendation here of the custodial service just strengthening that process by categorizing or labeling all their assets on the equipment. When we talk about equipment, we're talking about like waxers, vacuums, some other like leaf blowers, snow blowers, etc. And using software to track those assets as well, as opposed to just doing it on an Excel sheet. And also doing a periodic inventory. Yeah, you want to go and make sure that those assets are still there based upon your list. So, the risk here of not having these procedures in place is that, assets could basically be lost, misplaced, or inappropriately used. So I think Jonathan had agreed with this recommendations. He is looking into software. I think he had discussions with Tyler, which is the vendor that provides Munis to the city to see if they have an asset module that the city could use, and I think he's going to continue to explore that for the department to use. So with that, I'll see if there are any questions before moving on to the second finding.
Let me just ask one question. Could I?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, thank you. So you have physical equipment that is kind of different from a lot of other audits we do, where you've got, and do you keep, since you do school department and city stuff, is there just one place where all the equipment is and stuff?
So no, we keep as the process currently flows at facilities management. It's currently run through a spreadsheet. It's a rather developed spreadsheet that we've been keeping for a number of years. It's been the length of my employment with the city, which is 10 years in excess. That spreadsheet is we assign a tracking number to each piece of equipment, which is ascribed to that piece of equipment, and then it is deployed to its end location, right? So that could be in many instances that's a school, could be a city building. Many instances it's facilities management itself. A lot of times it's assigned to a tradesman's vehicle, for example, a skill saw. A tool that they might use as like a carpenter would use to complete their general tasks, their work orders as a technician. That's one group of them. On the custodial side, the equipment, as Dr. No mentioned, is custodial equipment. It's wetbacks, it's floor burnishers, things of that, and it's deployed to specific locations. Now, certain times of the year, certain events, that equipment gets shifted around in an effort to complete things on a timely. Sometimes our schedules are quite aggressive. So I think I answered your question. It's deployed all over, the city, all our buildings.
So is it hard to keep track of a wet vac that was in,
It can be, but these are usually valued pieces of equipment, right? And each building has a person that's assigned to that building, a senior position, right? In particular on the municipal side, the custodial staff is relatively small. And this equipment is their lifeblood, right? So how they perform this is essential to performing their duties. So generally we find it to be where, in good condition. I think some of the challenge is documenting that process. And as Dr. No mentioned, we've worked to integrate those two documents into one. Our process at facilities is a bit tighter, we found, so we're going to keep all that information in our process, our tracking system. And we are, again, always exploring additional options for integration into the Munis system, the Munis platform itself. With Tyler.
Good.
I think I answered your question.
Yeah, that's great.
I do have like a follow-up question that's tied to what Councilor Allen was saying. I was just curious, so you're saying there's pieces of equipment all over, but there's not necessarily all equipment doesn't live in each of the 90 buildings that we have. So you don't have like a snow blower and a leaf blower for every single building. So what you're doing is you're essentially moving stuff around.
For the most part, we're allocating and we're funded sufficiently to have what we need at each site. But there are certain events. Let's say, for example, there's a pipe break. Right?
Yeah.
We might at that point bring more product, more wet vacs to one site to vacuum that up.
Okay.
So for a short period of time, it wouldn't make sense to keep 6 wet vacs at one particular building. But for that event, it made sense to bring them there, right? So, and we're able to do that in-house. We're able to save costs by not bringing in an outside vendor. So in certain circumstances, we do bring them together. But by and large, equipment is allocated and funded to meet the comfortable needs, the minimum needs, but the comfortable needs of each facility based off its needs.
Got it. All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else online? Any other counselors have questions before we move forward? Hearing none. All right.
All right, so our second finding has to do with some conflicting duties amongst employees. So just for some background information, so we often investigate departments that have issues when items go missing or when there's fraud involved. And a common element in these instances entail when an employee has conflicting duties or when an employee does too much. And when we say they have conflicting duties, is that an employee has access to the assets. At the same time, they have the ability to modify financial records. So with facilities, we noted 2 instances or two roles, one by the facilities manager, Jonathan Kerrigan, and the other by Al Rodriguez. He's the head custodian, where there are conflicting duties in that they both have access to assets as well as having the ability to enter in transactions or modify accounting records. So our recommendation there is to have another person involved in the process, have a third person do the accounting. So that way, those conflicting duties are bifurcated amongst the directors and manager. And I think Jonathan had indicated that Mr. Brochu is now involved in the record keeping of such inventory.
Absolutely. Mr. Brochu is pretty much unanimous. He's our warehouse foreman. His predominant role oversees and supports not only the warehouse, but also the equipment. Mr. Brochu is directly and completely responsible for our asset tracking system, as well as now Al Rodriguez. So to the best of my abilities, both of those issues are settled or minimized to the best of my abilities. Now, unfortunately, the challenge remains. In my 10 years, I've hired just about all of the managers and facilities, including Ray Brochu. So he's the 3rd warehouse foreman. The first resigned, the second passed away. He's my 3rd warehouse foreman. So unfortunately, there is some need to train and have familiarity with the processes, but by and large, the responsibility and the oversight has been handed to Ray.
Any questions?
I don't have any.
No, I don't have any in this one.
Okay, so
No, I don't either. Thank you.
all right. So moving on to the third finding, and this has to do with potentially misclassified work orders. So we tested some work orders that were marked as complete when in fact they were not. So the risk here is that you have these tradesmen that go and do work orders, and they perform the job and they mark them as complete. Is that you could have a potential where a tradesman can mark a work order as complete when they're not, or ghosting, the work order is being complete. So what we're doing there, what we're recommending here is there should be a review of the tradesman's work just to ensure that work order is complete. At the same time, the tradesman should have some sort of verification that they completed the work by taking a picture of the job. Often you see when you have packages delivered by Amazon, right? They usually send a picture saying, "Hey, it's been delivered." So that's additional proof, and that a picture could be, I think, maybe uploaded to Munis as part of the work order and saying that it's complete, as well as the supervisor's review could be part of the workflow process in Munis, saying that when this work order is marked as complete, then there's a task assigned to the supervisor saying that did you verify that it was complete. So that's what we're recommending, and I think Jonathan had indicated that you are looking into this, just making sure that you have the bandwidth. I know you are limited in terms of the number of supervisors you have, so you just want to make sure you allocate the appropriate workload amongst your supervisors.
How many supervisors do you have?
I have 2 school zone chief and 1 municipal zone chief, as well as a facilities engineer.
So what does that mean in terms of the number of, I guess, facilities that one supervisor would have to then?
So at present, the city is carved into the way we use it. There's multiple zone classifications, but we carve the city into 4 zones. Zones 1, 2, and 3 are school. Zone 4 is municipal. Zone 3 is divided between the zone 1 and the zone 2 chief, prior position, years before my time. So the numbers vary, but if you're looking at the schools, for example, there's around 57 to, let's say, 60 schools. It's relatively split, right? 30 and 30, plus or minus 1 or 2 between each zone chief. Dr. No is correct, and that we're always looking to improve on these processes. I have had communications with Tyler Tech in regards to developing a workflow step or workflow process for the zone chief to receive the complete work order, as well as with the tradesmen who are our bargaining unit. We're current with the hang up at this point is the technology language in the contract, which is something I'm going to hopefully address at next bargaining cycle. We're always trying to improve that language, and as you can imagine, there's some resistance to that, but with time. But all of this is stuff that we're actively working on to improve our processes. But you're correct. I think Dr. No is correct that we will be challenging to do so without adversely affecting the workload of our managers, but it's something that I think we have to do, and we have to cross that bridge.
Just finding and implementing this finding will be challenging.
Potentially a little more challenging than some of the others. We like to be able to react very quickly and deliver results based off the findings, but this is one that will require additional support, possibly additional funding in time with Tyler Technologies, interdepartmental collaboration, as well as IT has a big stake in that, in supporting us through that process. But they've been great so far. Multiple IT departments too, because we're crossing both city and school by collaboration effort.
Young, you mentioned in the report here, it says 98% of work orders were reflected as completed. Is that the actual number, or is that what you found that was? What's the actual number that was completed? Because you
That's
said
the actual number that's recorded in Munis.
But you said that there some were misclassified.
Yeah, there were some, but there weren't many. So I think there was a handful. We counted like approximately 4 or 5. We don't test everything. When we do our testing, we test a sample.
The sample size, yeah.
So, but for the most part, this data is accurate. But we noted that there were some isolated incidents when work orders were not necessarily complete. So that's why we had these recommendations to improve that process, just to monitor your tradespeople to ensure that they're doing what they're supposed to do.
I have a question, thanks.
Okay.
What is your physical workflow? Do people, you guys are on Allen Street,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, I think it's 28 employees or something.
There's 43 tradesmen, on the managers, again, I've got 2 school zone chief, 1 municipal zone chief, an engineer, a handful of clerical staff, some 10 or 12.
All right, so do they all report to Allen Street? Or if I'm a carpenter and I got it,
Yeah, no, that group does report to Allen, yeah.
In the
They're all
morning.
Allen. Yes, sir.
and then if I had a job from yesterday as a carpenter to go build something in a school, I still go back to Allen the
That's
next
correct.
day before I go back to that.
Yes, sir.
school.
They have to pick up their vans, their equipment. They don't take any of that home.
They don't take that, okay, good. And, you know, when you, is there this kind of stupid question, but in a way, does everybody follow the same work process? Or when you say something was marked complete, but it wasn't really complete, how do you level that with everybody?
It's a challenge, right? And I think I just want to highlight that there has been in my 10 years, in the last few years in particular, a tremendous leap in technology. We've gone from an all paper system to now 100% digital system. Our tradesmen are receiving work orders via their laptops. They're inputting that data. And, you know, in the scheme of 8,000 work orders, mistakes do happen.
Yeah.
You know, we have a very strong, a good staff of people that for the most part want to do the job, but hey, mistakes do happen. Miscommunications happen, oversights do happen from time to time, and that's the quality improvement process that I think Jan brings to the table. We need to be always looking for that and trying to improve. There's always room for improvement. So,
So you have a control point that everybody comes back.
Yeah.
That was kind of what I was
Yeah.
getting at.
yeah, no,
If
we
I
have
get
to
a
have
carpenter job in
moreover,
Talbot,
I meet with each one of them each morning.
Okay.
You know, I sit with, I talk to every person in that building as they come in the morning and, you know, get a general, not a ton of communication because there's a lot of people, but a general assessment of what are you doing, where are you going,
how's
you
it
know,
going?
problems, questions, concerns, have a nice day.
Yeah,
you know,
good. Good, all right, that's good. Thank you, I'm all set. Yeah.
Any questions from any of the counselors online? Hearing none?
No, thank you.
All right.
Okay, so, the last 2 comments, have is a low risk item, and that's 3B is, just having, Jonathan ensuring that all costs are included in his, work order system in Munis. We noted that certain labor costs and material costs, may have been inadvertently, excluded, in Munis, so it's just a matter of just ensuring that those costs get reflected, in Munis to properly reflect the cost of jobs. And the last comment has to do with, on page 10, finding 4, there's a preventative maintenance feature, advertised by Munis. And we're recommending that Jonathan, look into using this feature, because you want to track preventative maintenance separately from repairs. So, it's a better mechanism to see how much time you're spending on preventative maintenance versus the actual repairs. So, if you're spending a lot of time on preventative maintenance, then you can hopefully make the correlation that there should be less repair costs, vice versa. So, I think Jonathan had met with Tyler Tech to talk about, using this feature, sometime in the near future. Okay, that's all I have. And again, I wanted to thank Jonathan and his staff for their cooperation. And by the way, Jonathan, I'm not a doctor, although I'd like to be a doctor.
I love that, because it's the
My
name of
friends
the
called me
old.
Dr. No in college, so.
I couldn't say, well, I apologize for that.
Yeah.
I don't know where that came from. It's been a long day.
Well, it's all right, I mean, it's
Yeah.
James Bond.
Yeah,
not
James
Dr.
Bond movie,
No.
yeah.
I love that.
I'm sorry about that. Let's attribute that to early morning snow inspections. I apologize.
Let's attribute that to a good sense of humor, that's
I
fine, that's
apologize.
doctor.
My gosh.
Young, nice
I could've
to
sworn
know
you had
about your becoming a doctor, that's great.
I had to say it, you had a doctorate, Apologize, sir.
No problem.
I want to get anybody online, counselors, do you have any questions before we let Mr. Kerrigan go?
I'm all set. Thank you. The questions were answered that I had between you two.
All right, Jonathan, thank you so much.
Thank you all for your time. Appreciate it.
Nice to see you again.
Pleasure as always.
Great
Thank you.
job, thank you.
I'd actually love to at some point to come check out one of your early morning,
Sure.
come check out, I've never been to the.
Let me know. 7
I
o'clock.
drive in.
7
I drive by it all the
It's a
time.
lively place. Yeah.
How many buildings are back there?
There's it's one central complex, but there's two, it's two buildings that have a fire separation wall. But it's quite a large complex. We make the most of what we have. We're tight, but there's a lot going, a lot of equipment. We have a good thing going on over there, and it's a good location too.
That's a good location.
Yeah.
That's good. I should do
Thank
the
you all.
same.
Appreciate it.
Right.
Have a good evening.
Nice to see you. Thanks for coming
Anytime. Take care.
too.
All right, so with that, I'll move on to the second audit report. So just to give you a background, as part of our audit process, we make, we do follow-up procedures on past recommendations that we make, just to ensure that those recommendations that have been agreed to by management have been implemented. And for those that don't get implemented, we try to obtain a revised management response as to when they plan on implementing, and we issue a follow-up report to the audit committee, so they can be updated on the status of those past recommendations. So we did a follow-up review at Health and Human Services. We had initially done the audit back in May of 2019, and from that audit, we made 8 recommendations, and we did this follow-up review, I think, in January of 23, just to see where the department was on those recommendations. So, of the 8 recommendations that we did make, 6 had been fully implemented, and 2 were in process. So I'll just keep this piece of the presentation short, so I'll just go over those recommendations that have not been implemented. So we'll start off on page 3. So hopefully you guys see the report on your screen here.
We do not.
You don't? Okay, so let me see if I can share it. So how about now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so on page 3, one of the open recommendations that had not been fully implemented had to do with reconciling expired grants in Munis just before they were closed out. So the risk here is that if you close out the grant without reconciling, you may leave money on the table, right? So it could be you didn't expend 100% of your grant, so you could have 20,000 left over. So you want to have this process to match up all the expenses against the grant award prior to closing out that grant. So they were still in process of working through the procedures here and working with the finance division and implementing some of the procedures. Now there is a new finance director at HSS, and as the former one retired, I think 3 or 4 months ago. So we plan on following up with the new finance director just to make sure that she's moving along and implementing this process. So the second open recommendation had to do with on page 4, service fees that are generated at the clinics. So patients pay a fee for health services rendered at the clinics, and insurance. They also get insurance proceeds. So when we did the audit, we noted that these fees were recorded as grant revenues. So it was inappropriate to record them as grant revenues because they did not pertain to a grant. So the proper way to record these fees was to record it into the general fund or set up a revolving account at HSS, which had to be approved by City Council in order to keep the funds with HSS. So when we had done this, a review in January of 2023, that was still in process. But I conferred with the city's comptroller and acting CAFO, and he indicated that that revolving account has since been established. It was approved by City Council in 2023, so this is no longer an issue going forward.
So that has been implemented? Is
Yes.
that-
The City Council approved the revolving fund at HSS.
So it goes from in process to implemented.
Right, so this is, it's no longer pending.
What does it mean to have a revolving fund?
So a revolving fund is a specific fund that's generated from a program activity that you could use to keep with the department. So typically, if revenues are generated at a department, those revenues would go into the general fund. Which wouldn't necessarily mean that the department would have access to those funds in the future. So if you set up a revolving account, it pertains to that particular department.
Like the trash fee revolving fund?
Yes, exactly. That's a big one. Otherwise, if you didn't have these revolving funds, they'd go into the general fund, and the funds would get reallocated based upon appropriations
So it's a way to keep those funds
with the department.
local in the department, yeah.
Now, is that with those funds, I guess, so the service fees, for instance, those funds are supposed to be going to the general fund? Is that like what the process is now? And I guess I'm trying to understand, there was a revolving fund set up, so in my mind, these funds you said were put as grant revenue, so I'm assuming has to be a reversal.
Yeah, so they stopped recording these revenues as grant because clearly they weren't grant revenues. So
Yes.
they were misclassified. So had they done this correctly without the revolving fund, those funds would have gone directly to the general fund, and the funds would have been reallocated by appropriations by the department. And the grant these service fees are clearly meant to augment programmatic activities at the health clinic.
Okay.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
So, Mr. No, when was the revolving fund, I guess, authorized and implemented by AHS after the city council approved it?
I believe it was the fall of 2023.
Okay, was there any money that went to the since it was misclassified as grant revenue, was there any money that was allocated or put over there before that?
No, I believe they stopped. They had kept those funds as grant revenues. Then after the revolving fund was established, they started recording the revenues into the revolving fund.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Counselor Govan. Any other questions from anybody else?
I'm all set. Well, I guess I'm all set on the reports, but I have a question for Dr. No.
Sure.
Go ahead.
So do you have, Young, do you have your whole work plan for this year set out?
That's the FY 25 audit plan will be I guess complete and presented to the audit committee by April. That's a city ordinance that we adhere to. The ordinance states that we need to present an audit plan to the audit committee by April 1st.
Okay,
So that's in the works.
all right, great. Thank you.
I do have a couple questions, because you mentioned you do go back and check on recommendations. I guess, is there a percentage of recommendations that you put out that are implemented versus not? That you
For the most part, all of our recommendations, have been agreed to by management, so, when they don't, agree, when management doesn't agree with the recommendations, it's because it's too costly to implement.
Mhm.
They feel as though that, it's not, the risk, isn't that great. But for the most part, I'd say about 98% of all our recommendations, have been agreed to, by management.
It's a good percentage. All right, I think that's all the questions I have.
Yeah, I'm all set with my questions.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Uh, Thank you, Mr. No.
Thank you,
Doctor, no.
Dr. No.
Dr. No, you gotta be Dr. No from now.
Now we got it, yeah, it's official.
It's
All right.
official. I'm with Zeta.
Honorary doctor, thank you.
Yeah, there you go.
Make a motion, Zeta. I'll second it.
I motion that we make the young Noah doctor from now on.
Thanks, guys.
I
Well,
All right,
second
thank
it.
you.
Take care, everybody.
Take care.
Thank you.
Have a
Have a
good
good
night.
one.
You too.
Thanks.